And we are live. There's always a moment of hesitation while we wait for that red ticker to come on screen to say that we're here. So welcome everyone to our second episode of Inspired Live, which we are streaming both on LinkedIn Live and on YouTube. I'm going to introduce our wonderful speakers momentarily. So ladies, if you don't mind bearing with me just for a minute. But yes, I am really excited to be bringing our second episode today. It's going to be all about sharing our top tips and approaches so you can really elevate your networking skills and also build a meaningful network in 2024. So it's for everybody. It's for those that are new to networking. It's for those of us who've been networking our entire careers that want to really sort of hone in our skills, maybe have a bit of a different approach, a different focus for this year, but it's all about elevating your networking skills and your approach. Throughout this discussion today, we want to hear from you, those who are watching us today. So if you do have any questions or insights, ideas, please drop them in the comments box and we'll do our best to address them during the show. Or absolutely, we've put some time aside for a Q&A from you guys at the end, but do comment along. You might have some really interesting insights there as well. So as you know, networking is both loved, feared, valued and avoided where possible with some people, and it's like a bit of a Marmite situation for many, but we're hoping today that we can show you how networking in a meaningful way can add huge amounts of value to you and your career in the job that you do, and how it can be a real game changer for your organization, and to make sure that you really do invest enough time and resource for your networking. So without further ado from me, it's time for me to introduce our wonderful panelists here. We've got Laura Summers, founder and director of Book Machine, and we've got Srishti Kadu, who is the founder, a brand new founder of ReTyped. So welcome both of you to the panel today. I'm just going to say a little bit of a few words just to kind of introduce you, and then we'll jump into the questions. But Srishti, you moved to the UK from Mumbai to study at Lancaster University. You graduated as a book and design and publishing assistant. You've won many awards. You've been on so many panels. You're a fantastic speaker for us to have here today. You've been on the SYP with me recently, speaking about how to get ahead in your career. And now just this year, you have launched ReTyped, which is an organisation that helps foreign nationals build and navigate their publishing career in the UK, which is absolutely incredible. And I know there's been absolute outpouring of support for you and just praise for bringing something like this to the industry. So congratulations on that, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
No worries. And then Laura Summers, for those of you who don't know her, she is an absolute powerhouse, co-founded Book Machine in 2010, and now has a team of 10 people working across the industry on creative and impactful marketing campaigns, as well as running your incredible Book Machine campus membership hub, which provides industry and community events and training. So it's absolutely brilliant to have you here talking about your first love of networking.
Thank you, Susie.
Book Machine always, how it came along is for you loving the network.
And may it be known that Susie was at the very first Book Machine gathering ever. Remember that moment.
And I also love networking as well. So this is a joy for us to both be on this today as well, which is brilliant. So first up, as we, as this event is about, we're going to be talking about meaningful networks. So the first question is, what tips or advice would you give to somebody to make sure that they build a network of quality connections over quantity? Laura, I'm going to come to you on this first, if that's okay.
Yeah, this is such an interesting question and something I think about a lot. So thank you, Susie. So I think there's a real difference between how extroverts and introverts take this on. And I'm aware that many of us see ourselves as ambiverts, somewhere in the middle anyway. But an extrovert would naturally build a really large network of people and will be seen to interact with many people, whereas an introvert will have a smaller pool of close contacts. So I think on the surface, it looks as if the extrovert is the better networker. But actually, and like linking back to your question, Susie, which asked about the quality, there's a lot to be said for having a smaller pool of contacts who really know you, really respect you, and really understand you. And you can't do that at a very large scale. So I think that there's a bit of a misconception that extroverts are better at this than introverts. So in terms of my advice, if this is really important to you and what you're doing and where you are in your career, you need a list. So you need to start out by identifying who exactly do you need to know. And then you don't need to be trying to engage and talk to every single person. You've got your list, you know who's important, and it's being selective. Go to your list, think, where are they likely to go, show up and be there. If you've got something that you think will be of interest to them, send it to them, connect with them on social media, obviously. If you're brave and can invite them out for a coffee, you don't need an agenda. You can be interested in who they are and what they do. And I think what's really important is if you're making all these steps and you're sending information, you're asking people out for coffee, you're really putting yourself out there, which can be quite scary. It does not matter. They're not going to be judging you. It's nothing personal. And they will just think, oh, I remember that nice person who invited me to do something once when my inbox was so busy and I forgot to respond to them. So I think it can be a little bit demoralizing. And I've seen people be quite sort of demoralized when they don't get the responses that they want. It doesn't matter. Just do it anyway. And then you're on their radar and you've put yourself out there, and you will get responses, but don't take where you don't get a response, don't take that to heart. Don't take it personally.
Yeah.
It's just part of what you need to do to develop that network.
Fantastic, thank you. Srishti, have you got some ideas to add?
Yeah, I completely agree with what Laura said about that. Yeah, something sort of to keep in mind is a lot of the networking events tend to happen in London or in the South, and that can be quite off-putting for some people who can't come to London every time there's a networking event. But I think it doesn't have to be about being at like a big networking event. And there's publishing companies sort of all over the country, up and down the country really. And I think one of the things I would advise is if you want to get a job in publishing, or if you just want to sort of meet other people who work in publishing and you're not London based or near London, you can reach out and find out about other publishing companies that are near you, and try and find out who people are working there, and reach out to them on LinkedIn or social media or whatever, and just ask to meet for a virtual coffee, and sort of building those relationships with people who work in the similar industry as you. It might not be that you have to sort of spend lots of money and go down to London and attend a big networking event and like speak to 50 people. You just have to sort of make a few connections and sort of build that relationship, and you can just ask them for advice on something or support. It doesn't have to be about getting a job. It can just be as a mentor or just as a colleague. It's like, hey, I work in publishing in, I don't know, Lancaster is where I was, and I see that you also work in publishing in Manchester, and there's so few publishers up here, and would you fancy just having a virtual coffee or something and just getting to know each other? And it's sort of like building a network from that point of view. And it's sort of the quality of the connections, because those are the connections you end up sort of staying in touch with longer term, compared to lots of people you might meet at a big gathering or an event. So those are the connections you do tend to rely on. Yeah.
And I think it is so much easier in some ways that people are much more open to those virtual meetings, and it takes sort of less time out of their day as well to commit to a meeting like that. I think what's really important, though, if we're looking at both sides in that quality sort of network, is to make sure that you're always seeing where you can add value on both sides of the coin. So from top down, bottom up type thing. So I think, like, if you can really hone in on your, why that would be a meaningful network, and to be able to try and articulate that a little bit in the approach would be really beneficial, and mean that you might be more successful in connecting with that person. And as Laura said, like, do not worry about someone not responding or not coming back to say yes immediately. It's a starting point. And it actually goes back to that, 20 seconds of bravery. So just be brave and do it anyway. Even if it doesn't end up in being something that happens that day, it's definitely worth it. And you'll feel so much better about the fact that you have been proactive to try and develop that meaningful network. And when it means something to you as well, this is my last point, when it means something, you'll be so much more sort of passionate, enthusiastic, and authentic about the approach, rather than I have to know everyone in publishing. It will come across as they just want to know everyone. If you really mean that connection, if you really want to connect with them, take your time, tailor it, and make it happen. And it will. Perfect. So thank you so much for that. We'll go on to our next question, which is, how can individuals or organizations connect with new audiences but beyond their existing circles? So I'm really interested in this one as well, because I'm always wanting to expand and sort of learn new things from other networks, because there's always new people coming into the industry and new ideas and new skills and things like that. So I always have to be expanding my knowledge and my network. So Srishti, I'll come to you first on this one, if that's okay.
Sure, yeah. I mean, digital, like social media and the internet and stuff is really great in a way, because if you're looking for a network with a specific focus, you can almost certainly find it somewhere. There's Facebook, there's Instagram, there's LinkedIn, there's Twitter, there's also X. There's all sorts of different platforms that you can find people who work in publishing. And the other thing is, like, publishing is quite a broad term in some ways, because there's obviously the print books, there's digital books, there's audiobooks, there's self-publishing, there's trade publishing, academic publishing. There's so many different varieties to it, and there is like a lot of scope there to sort of look outside of your comfort zone and look outside of where you normally would go for your networking events, or where you'd normally get your news about what's going on in the industry. And I think because there's so much, I don't know, I think books are just fantastic in some ways, but there's so much interest in books. As if you ask someone, have they thought about writing or publishing a book, the answer is almost certainly like, yeah, I've thought about doing it at least, someday. So there's that interest is there in a lot of people in the community, and I think reaching them through different means is important. And I think an interesting sort of point to add to that would be, if you can't find a network that you want to be a part of, if you can't see one that you think should exist, just start it yourself. Just start a Facebook group or something, and then you'll have a network.
Great advice.
Yeah, just sort of to. I mean, there's just so much scope out there, and just sort of putting yourself outside of your comfort zone. So if you're someone who goes to your company networking events, perhaps you can try and expand and go to a different sort of a national conference or a publishing conference or something like that, and try and meet people from other companies. I work in academic publishing, but I've got friends I've met at different networking events who work in trade, and I can sort of catch up with them on what trade production is doing differently to academic, and just sort of have interesting discussions around that. So yeah,
brilliant.
Something along those lines. Yeah.
Fabulous. Laura, coming to you.
Lots of very sensible advice there. Thank you. I think so. I mean, I talked before about having a list. So I'd go, if I was looking to go into a new area, which I might not be familiar with, I'd go through that approach again, sort of creating a list and working in the same way. However, once I'd sort of done as much as I could do in that area and sort of really reached out to people, I'd think about who else is in the same situation as I'm in. So who else is also trying to be in this new area or reaching new people, and then reaching out to them as well, and essentially partnering up and working together and introducing them to people as soon as you can. So if you meet someone who would get on really well with someone else who you might have worked, just to essentially help others to be where you want to be as well, and then sort of work together, work collectively. And I think that's sort of an approach, basically. Does that answer your question, Susie?
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant thought, actually. And from what you both were saying there, I was just thinking, like, what else could I say? And really, I was thinking, actually, sometimes it's not in publishing that we need to be. We need to go outside to kind of think differently and see how other people are facing that challenge, and to kind of be able to bring in different thoughts. And I'm thinking of always thinking of like diversity and inclusion, and like sort of leveling up, looking at different organizations, and we're working with one at the moment, and we're just learning so much from how they're approaching. They've got nothing specifically to do with any industry, let alone publishing, but it's just that's a really interesting way of using networking to then bring it back for our industry to kind of learn from as well. So no, that's really interesting. Okay, so next up, we have got, how can professionals at all stages of their careers shift their mindset to prioritize adding value in their roles whilst networking? So really sort of shifting the focus onto networking to add value in their role for their organization. So Srishti, I'm going to stay with you on this one to start with. That's okay.
So that's a really interesting question, and I did think about this for a while on that, because I think networking has always been a very sort of integral part of building a career for me. And I mean, I came from India. I didn't know anybody in publishing. I didn't know anybody in the UK as such. So sort of starting really from the scratch and it was always important to sort of trying to think about shifting your mindset to making it important. I think a lot of people can sort of think about networking as a way to get a job, or as a way to get a foothold in the industry. And then once you get in, it's like, okay, I'm in. I'm done with that. I don't want to do that again, sort of thing. But it's not like that. It's more of like it's an investment in yourself. It's an investment in your future. And a network can help you. It's not something that might be immediately helpful to you, but it's something that you build and nurture over time, so that in the future, if you're looking for a job, or if you're looking just for some support or some advice or some mentoring or something like that, it can be really useful to know other people in the industry who've either come from a similar background as you, or from a completely different background as you, and you can sort of ask them how sort of whatever questions you might have about how to get to a particular stage in your career, or how to bridge certain knowledge gaps, or like it is something that can be really useful if you're trying to upskill, or if you're trying to sort of do something a little bit differently. You've got your network, and you can reach out and ask them questions, and same people can come to you and ask you questions, and it can be really quite satisfying to be able to help someone and be able to sort of support them and give them advice on what they should be doing, or what they could be doing. So it's sort of changing that mindset of, this is going to help me get a job, to this can be like a sort of like a lifelong support almost in my career, and just having someone I can bounce ideas off, or just having someone I can talk to about like, oh, I'm having this problem at work, just wanted to sort of get your take on it. Just something like that, just a little bit of support can be really useful. And
really critical for good good work-life balance in some ways as well, to kind of build up that support network for work inside your organization and outside as well, especially if you're coming from somewhere where you don't know anyone, or that kind of thing. It's really important. It's a life skill as well, not just for work,
it is,
but outside of life, having people around us. Laura, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think as well as your own professional career, wherever you're working, the bigger network you have, the more you're able to pull in for your actual job. So, if you're working in a design department and you meet a whole pool of freelance designers, and then you're looking to freelance something out, and you're the one who knows all of these designers, that can really benefit both yourself and your business as well, wherever you're at. And depending on if you're in a very large organization, there might be a lot of internal networking to do because there's so many people. But you can still benefit from bringing external ideas and expertise in. And then similarly, if you're in a very small publisher or publishing organization, you can just learn so much more from having sort of a wider pool. So I think it's just win-win all around at whichever stage of your career you're in.
Yeah, I agree. And I think as we talk to the more senior members of people that work in publishing, they should be encouraging people across the organization from the bottom up to be networking as much as they can, not just socially, but in terms of going out, maybe outside of publishing again, just to kind of get different ideas, and it will bring more innovation, it will bring more change. It might help us reach the answers quicker by talking to people beyond our own network, by not just doing things the same way they've already been done. And I think as well, when you are you've been networking in the same circles for many years, it might become, you just go and see the same people, and it's just catching up with your mates, and it's not really adding value to you. And I think this is exactly what this whole webinar live, Inspired Live, LinkedIn Live is all about, which is to really sort of challenge what you're doing now to elevate yourself, and sort of almost challenge yourself. Yes, say hello to your friends, obviously, but go and speak to somebody else, and really sort of bring back some value from the networking events that you go to year after year, to get more from them, to elevate you, your business, and your team around you. I think it's really important.
I think we should make a pact, Susie, not to talk to each other
at
the IPG.
I'm not going to.
We're just going to be like,
are we like, no? I'm still going to say hello to you. Maybe at the end.
Yeah, we'll save it for the end.
Depends how many people you've spoken to. I love it. Oh, challenge. Yes. So next up, how can I now enjoy IPG rather than fear it, because you're not going to talk to me? No. How can we enjoy networking rather than fear it? Laura, I'm coming to you.
So I've always enjoyed networking. So I've never had to train myself into doing it. And as I run an organization where we encourage people to meet each other, we're basically a networking organization as well as an agency. I always used to say to people, just really flippantly, just pretend you're making friends, and it's just like making friends. But actually, sometimes that's really difficult for people. So I think if you struggle with it, you don't enjoy it, it feels like a chore, you're not quite sure what to say, how to behave, you just feel really awkward, I get it. I think it's really about focusing on the person you're speaking with, and everyone has something interesting to say and an interesting story. You don't need to be that person, but the person you're speaking to can be that person. So it's asking the right questions and really getting to know the person that you're speaking with, essentially, rather than trying to be interesting. And I think that's why people find networking scary, because they feel like they have to perform, they feel like they have to be funny, they have to be interesting, they have to know things. So just ask questions and make the person you're speaking with feel like they're the interesting person, and it takes the pressure off you, and
Yes.
they're going to be much more inclined to speak to you than if you're just sort of trying to sound interesting and tell them lots of information. Obviously, it depends on your personality. You know, this might not feel comfortable for some people, but yeah, I'd say my top tip is to find interesting things about other people rather than trying putting that pressure on yourself to be the one.
Brilliant, thank you. Srishti.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit on sort of, it depends on the day, really. Sometimes I really love networking. I love meeting new people. Sometimes I'm just like, I need to do this. And initially when I started, it was more of the, okay, I'm really terrified of this. I feel, you feel judged. You feel a little bit sort of put on the spot. If you're a little bit more introverted, you can struggle with some of the sort of nitty-gritties of it and being asking questions, and it can be you know, the first sort of like 5-10 minutes of when you walk into an event space for networking can be really like you don't know what's going on, you don't know what to do, you don't know whether to grab a drink or go just randomly start talking to people, but they look like they're having a nice time already without you. So you know, you have all these thoughts in your head, and it can be really difficult to sort of come to the networking event and just go full speed. So I think a way to sort of trying to enjoy it, I think, goes a little bit back to that first point about the quality of the network. So if you're someone who's more comfortable approaching people one-to-one and having those discussions and building your network that way, that's absolutely fine. You don't have to go to a networking event if you don't feel comfortable doing that yet. You can sort of build up on your one-to-one skills and sort of get to know people better that way, build up your network, and then when you feel a bit more comfortable with that, you can maybe dip your toes in and go to a talk or something, a lecture or a publishing conference or something like that, and meet people there, because then the focus is more on the speakers and the talk going on, but usually there's like 5-10 minutes in the beginning or end where you can sort of get to speak to other people who are at the event. And then when you're feeling a little bit more comfortable, you can maybe go to a speed networking event or something a bit different, and just trying to sort of gradually grow your confidence with it. And a good tip would be to, if you're going to a conference or an event and there's people who you want to meet, do a little bit of research. If you want to ask, if you have specific questions to ask them, going back to Laura's point about making a list, you can, if you've got a genuine question to ask, most people do really love it if you come up to them and you ask them a question. It's genuinely generally a nice thing to do. The other thing, if you are struggling, sort of the first 5-10 minutes of a networking event, I can find quite like, I don't know what I'm doing, I need to sort of get settled in. I found sometimes taking a friend can help. Doesn't have to be a publishing friend, but if it's a publishing friend, it's great. Just not to sort of talk to for the entire event, but just sort of to ease you into it for the first 5-10 minutes while you get your bearings and get the lay of the land and just sort of understand how things are working. I think that can be sometimes quite helpful. But yeah, it's just sort of, if you're whatever you're really comfortable with, sort of practicing on that and then sort of moving on to trying different ways of networking and building your network. Yeah.
Go on, Laura.
Yes. I just remembered something as you were speaking there. And I remembered that after COVID, I suddenly had this massive fear, and I just remember being so nervous suddenly, whereas I hadn't been previously. And there was this event, and I didn't know anyone who was going to it, but I saw someone. I don't know if he's listening to this. I'm not even going to mention his name. I saw someone, I'd never met him. I didn't know him, but he tweeted that he was going. And I just DM'd him and I said, look, after COVID, I'm a little bit nervous of walking in on my own. Do you mind meeting outside and walking in together? And it's so random. My husband was like, he's going to think you're so weird. I was like, yeah, I'm not going, I can't bring myself going on my own. Anyway, so we met up, we did it. He was really relieved as well, because he was a bit funny about going in on his own. And we had a really fun night. And now I see him all over the place and my friends. And I'm not suggesting you do that everyone does that as an approach, but it did actually really work. So just
I mean, I think it's such a great idea, and I think the key is that preparation. It's the same as if you're interviewing for a job or anything. The more prepared you are to be in that exact environment, the more confident you're going to feel, and you'll have, if you've got a bit of a game plan. So a networking event will feel like exciting some people, but like the worst thing you have to do. And so there's different levels of what success might look like. For somebody, it might just be being at that event, and that is enough, and that's absolutely fine as well. But it's not, it doesn't mean that you've lost all hope of networking in that environment. You can follow up afterwards to say that you were there, and you can build a relationship on your own time. But for others, you might be very excited about being at an event. You still need to be prepared, and also challenge yourself, like we might, Laura, to say, right, we need to speak to 10 people we've never spoken to before, or whatever it's going to be. And we need to research who those people are. So we've got something interesting and a great, like you were saying there, a great question to ask them to really engage them. And I think that preparation, it always comes back down to that preparation. Like, why are we going? What are we saying? How do we introduce ourselves, and practice that so you feel confident in how you are presenting yourself as well. And then you'll be able to kind of elevate and open up conversations from there, whether that's live because you feel confident to do that, or after with some really interesting questions and follow-up. So brilliant. Now we're coming to our final question. Our audience has been quite quiet up until this point, so I'm just giving you a little bit of a heads up that we'll be coming to you for any burning questions you have after we finish this question. Otherwise, we will crack on here. But how can individuals overcome challenges and biases to extend their network in a meaningful way? Now I've forgotten who I've gone to first last time. I think it was Laura, so I'll come to Srishti first.
Yeah, I think one of my biggest challenges initially, obviously, was the fact that I just did not know where to begin. I did not know anybody in the industry or very many people in the UK. So I think one of my sort of the thing that I relied on a lot was the university and the university's sort of networking groups, and the team at the university who ran different like student unions and organizations and all that sort of stuff, just to try and immerse myself a little bit more in how things worked, because it was a huge culture shock coming from India in some ways. It took me a weirdly long time to understand why people were asking me about the weather so much. I realized it was small talk. Just like, okay.
Our favorite line.
It's just it was very different coming in and just trying to understand how sort of things worked and where I fit in and what I needed to do. And I really relied on the university. I also found Facebook groups really helpful back then when I had a Facebook account still, and I found it really useful to because I was coming from India. I found a Facebook group of students going from India to Lancaster University, and we had a little meetup so we could like get to know people and just sort of like, because all of us, we were like, I don't know, 18 to 20-year-olds going abroad for the first time, leaving families behind, that sort of stuff. So it was nice to have a little bit of a support, to know that there would be someone there that I could talk to if there were some problems. And another group that I've came across on Facebook was the Society of Young Publishers, and that's how I realised that that's how I realised that they ran like publishing events, networking events in Manchester, which was really close to Lancaster, and I didn't have to go all the way to London to the London Book Fair or other events to just to sort of meet other people in publishing. And I started going to more of the SYP events and started talking to people there, and just sort of using again the research side of it, again using the internet and all these other things that we have access to now to learn a little bit more about what how I can extend my network and how I can get to know people in this new place. And when it comes to sort of biases, I think there's going to be, when you go to a networking event, or if you speak to someone who you're trying to build a connection with, and you feel, okay, this isn't really you know, they don't really get me, or it's not really, you know, it doesn't quite feel right, or it doesn't click. It's absolutely okay to sort of walk away, or it's absolutely okay to say, oh, it's been really nice to meet you. I'm just going to go and say hi to someone else over there. That's absolutely fine. No one's going to expect you to sort of stand there with them and talk to them for the entire hour. You can walk away from situations if you're not comfortable, or if you're just sort of like, okay, I've wrapped this up, I'll follow up later with an email, but I'm just going to wander over there now. That took a long sort of time to, you know, to sort of be okay, to be comfortable with doing that myself, just being like, oh, it's lovely meeting you, I'm going to go over there now, kind of thing. That can be really difficult for people to get to grips with, I think.
Okay, thank you so much. That's really interesting and great to know that there's lots of different sort of networks out there for lots of different groups, and to make you feel less alone, I suppose, in a brilliant adventure like the one you've been on. And then Laura, what would you
I think I've got quite a bit to add, but I think that skill that you've just described, that being able to say, this space isn't right for me, I'm going to move, and just being able to finish a conversation politely and assertively is really important. It does take a long time to get there as well, just being able to not having to stay there for the hour or whatever it is. I think as a white female Londoner, talking about sorts of biases and overcoming challenges, like I haven't overcome a lot of the challenges, and I haven't been on the receiving end of biases, which many people are. But I would like to recommend a podcast episode that I think deals with this really, really well. So it's the podcast is called How to Own the Room. And it's such a brilliant podcast. So Viv Groskop, who's a comedian, author, stand-up, she invites interesting business leaders to talk about how they sort of develop their confidence, and networking sort of fits into that. And one of the episodes that really stood out to me on this topic was with Angela Cretu, who was or is I think she was CEO of Avon. I don't know if she still is. And she was put into a really senior role when she was 24 years old, and she's grown up in communist Romania, and all of her peers within the organization were basically old white Western men. And she felt so out of place. She really felt like, what am I doing here? Why have they put me in this position? And she had a mentor who helped her and sort of explained to her that actually the reason why she had that role is because her voice was really important, and the company really needed someone that didn't fit that mold of everyone else, and that she needed to use who she was and what made her different and actually bring that to the table. And that was her, like, why she'd been chosen. And whereas before she'd had that mentor, she was really feeling, I'm different, I don't belong here, I'm too young, my background's different. And the way it's described in the podcast is it's really powerful. And I really recommend listening to it. And it just is a way of sort of framing who you are and where you are and why you're there. And particularly in publishing, like, we need different voices to be working in this industry. We need different voices and different people to be represented in our books. There's like you everyone belongs here. This is
Thank you so much. That's incredible. Suzanne Kavanagh has also very kindly put the link in the chat. So please do. I know what I'm doing after this. I'm clicking on there. I'm going to listen to that before next week. So thank you, Laura. That is brilliant. There are a couple of questions to ask. Again, from the lovely Suzanne. Hello, Suzanne. She'd love to know what Laura and Srishti think about virtual networking. If you really struggle in person, or you can't get to in-person events, I think Srishti, you've sort of experienced this quite a lot, having seen lots of events being in London and not in the north. What are the best tools now to use?
There's just so many sort of different options you've got out there. If you're meeting someone virtually, my sort of go-to is Whereby. You don't need to download anything, or sort of, it's just like a browser. You click in, and you've got it's all sort of for free, and you can just meet someone for a cup of coffee or for 20 minutes or whatever. So I use that quite often. I use that for my mentees as well, just to have like usual catch-ups and stuff. I find that really quite useful because there's just no faff with it. It's just
straight
put your name down and go.
Yeah. Brilliant. Excellent. Laura, have you got
I'm a big fan of no faff as well. So I've got a Calendly Google integration. So every time I'm speaking to someone and we say, oh, let's sort of online, and I say, oh, let's have a Zoom call or something, I literally just send them a link and they have direct access to my diary. They pick a time and it saves like 8 messages of, are you free at this time? No, I can't do that. Can you do this time? And it just like tries to get out. So one link, here it is. These are all the times, off you go. And it just is a lot simpler. So
love that. Very efficient. I think you were one of the first people I'd seen adopt that Calendly. It's brilliant, game changer. And then Abigail Barkley, who works alongside me at Inspired, does the panel have any more advice on following up after networking? This is a great question. Beyond the initial introduction, you've done all of the hard work, and how do you then develop and sustain that relationship? Because that is, I think, the key actually of networking, which is the follow-up. Laura, shall I come to you first on this one?
I think keep abreast of what's happening in the news, particularly like the Bookseller, and if you're speaking to people and you see something come up and it's relevant to the person you've spoken to, send them a congratulations note, or I read this thing about your company, and just sort of keep the dialogue going, relevant to sort of them and their sort of their careers and their businesses, and then also trying to show up as much as you can and be present.
I'd agree with that, absolutely. Srishti, any more on that? Or?
I agree with that. I think when you go to some of these publishing events, you tend to see some of the similar faces around, and it's a really great opportunity to build up on your initial chat. So quite often I'll see Laura or you at different events, and I'll be like, hey, just from across the room. And it's just sort of, you see a lot of similar faces around, and you kind of that's how you sort of get to know people. I think post-COVID as well, in-person events have been quite useful to just sort of remind ourselves of the industry, and these are the people, and because at the end of the day, it is about the people who make the publishing really exciting as an industry to work in. And it's just sort of following up on that. You can drop a LinkedIn message to grab a coffee if they're local to you or nearby to you, or if you're going to go to an event and you see that they're going as well, you can say, oh, I'm going to be there as well and hope to run into you or something like that. And it's just sort of following on with it
from there. Got a great question, because we did talk a little bit in our introduction on London Book Fair, which is obviously around the corner. If you're approaching a big and busy event like LBF, for example, and you don't necessarily know who you're approaching, what's the best opening question? Wow. I mean, what is it? I think it depends who it is.
I'm so basic. I'm literally like, hi, how are you doing? Really, really basic for me.
I love that. Also, what are you doing at London Book Fair? What do you hope to achieve from London Book Fair? Sort of bit more, I don't know. Srishti,
that's a really interesting question. I think it depends on who it is, but I guess if you don't really know who you're approaching, you can sort of try and find out. I really like to find out if it's someone's first time at the London Book Fair, because it's more like you can see it on their face. They're just like looking around like, whoa, this is amazing. Or if they're just like,
or maybe how many London Book Fairs have you been to? Or is that rude? Because I can see it on your face.
So that's sort of my go-to.
That's actually a favourite one of mine for Frankfurt, because there's always a bit of a competition, I think, for how many Frankfurt book fairs have you been to. Oh, so good. But I think, again, just coming back to that one, it's an anonymous LinkedIn user there. But what I would say is going back to that advice of really preparing, and then and then just if you're in a big networking event like a drinks kind of thing, just kind of go with it and ask an interesting question about what they do or what they're doing there. I think that
just
would
just talk about the weather. That's what, you know, that's what we do, isn't it? Isn't it? Can you believe it's raining?
Oh my goodness. Well, I think given we've had 45 minutes, and I think I must draw it to a close, sadly, because I'm really enjoying myself with you guys today. So thank you so much. And thank you, audience, for participating and your questions. We hope you've got some really good tips, maybe kind of thinking about that next networking event in a slightly different way. And hopefully you can go ahead and develop your network in a more meaningful way. We've got our next Inspired live show coming up as well. This is going to be on International Women's Day on the 8th of March at 12 noon. We are super excited about this one. And we've got two incredible speakers lined up. So we've got Laura Mayer, who you might recognise the name of. She's the ex-CIO from HarperCollins. She's now an independent CIO, investor and advisor. And alongside Laura, we've got Yanmin Zuchenmanda, who's head of operations at The Flip, that's the female leadership in publishing. So they're going to be talking about how to take stock and invest in gender equity. So really nice follow on from this episode. Once again, Laura and Srishti, thank you so much for all your time today and for all your advice, lovely tips, and let's go and elevate our networking skills and build meaningful networks in 2024. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite.
Thanks.